Well, it is really hard for me to say this, but we lost our dog Buck yesterday morning from complications from his surgery. He had a big incision in his chest, and there was some sort of infection that grew inside of the major surgery, and that infection probably caused the incisions to loosen, which started allowing air to get into his chest cavity. And this is from the huge growth that he had removed from his chest, which ended up being a very, very complicated and extensive surgery to remove. And the vet said that he was impressed that Buck even managed to survive at all. Basically this air, as he was breathing late at night, we heard him breathing, and it was very labored, and air was getting into the chest. We could hear air sucking into the incision. And when he was standing, luckily when we got him to lie down, air didn't seem to be getting in, but the air that got in was on top of his lungs, and that prevented him from breathing because it created pressure and prevented his lungs from expanding. And then the next morning, we were going to rush him into, it was still happening, we were going to go rush him into a veterinary emergency place. And he just all of a sudden stopped breathing altogether, probably for, I don't know, 20 or 30 seconds or something like that. And I had to give him mouth to nose resuscitation. And I was blowing in, there was a blockage, and I managed to push through it and kind of blow whatever mucus or something that was blocking his breathing. So maybe some fluid was also getting into his lungs. There was a lot of fluid buildup. And we got him to the veterinary emergency place, and basically they said that it was going to be about $12,000 to operate him, to fix whatever might be wrong, but that they weren't sure if he was going to be able to survive surgery, and that they weren't sure if they'd be able to fix the problem. And on top of that, we found out that the growth Buck had was cancer, and probably would have maybe only had another year to live at that point. And it's a lot of money, but it just didn't really come down to money, because we just thought we were just kind of snookered basically with Buck. And we knew, the vet told us as well, that he probably wouldn't survive more than a few hours in his state. They did things to stabilize him. They drew that air off of the outside of his lungs and gave him some painkillers and some oxygen. And both Tori and I said goodbye to Buck, and we got to be there with him, where he died in a very natural and pain-free way, as we were both snuggling him and patting him. And of course it was absolutely crushing, because Buck was just so close to us. And as sad as it is, having your dog, who's really your best friend, who's a best friend to Tori and I, he'd been with us through so much, on so many different adventures, and all across Canada, the crazy whitewater canoe trips and backpacking trips in the Rockies. He'd been to the Northwest Territories and northern Saskatchewan with us. He crossed the Ungava Peninsula with me. He crossed Baffin Island with me, and all kinds of other trips too. He's just amazing out there in the bush. And we got him from a guy named Alex Matthias, who we brought Buck back to his place a few times in the following years after we got Buck, when he was about 5, and he was just an outdoor sled dog that lived in northern Ontario. And Buck's life is like a Disney movie, pretty much. He was this outdoor sled dog. First of all, he's named after Buck from Call of the Wild, and he got to be free and roam around in a big area. And then we took him, and he got to he got to be a free dog. And then we took him on all these trips, and then he ended up living here at our house on the Magnetawan River where he got to just run free again. He had no fences. He just absolutely loved it here. It was a great place for a dog and human alike to call home. Buck was on the Discovery Channel.
You are a good dog. You walked across the Ungava Peninsula, didn't you?
Oh, how could you help but root for Buck through that whole adventure?
Me and him filmed our Ungava crossing, and the show Daily Planet on Discovery Canada aired a spot, and Buck was the hero of the show as usual.
Jim gambles with a shorter but more dangerous route over boulders and rocks.
Come on, Buck!
But the difficult path gets Buck stuck at the bottom of the ridge, pushing Jim to help him and do the trek twice.
I just don't even care anymore. Just the fastest way is best.
Unless he can get Buck quickly up the ridge, Jim now faces the reality of traveling over a dangerous boulder field in the dark with hunger zapping his energy.
Oh my God, he did it! Come on, Buck! Can't believe he made it up that hill. Good boy! Good boy.
He was in multiple Explore magazine features where more pictures of Buck showed up in the magazine article than pictures of me. He was on History Channel when Ted and I went on to Alone. They shot a thing with us in our homes and stuff like that, and Buck was howling and was a big part of that as well.
Good boy.
He did presentations with me, and more than anything, he just seemed to touch the heart of so many people. Buck was the kind of dog that everyone wanted. He was calm, but yet in times of concern, he'd jump to attention and chase a bear away. One time he chased a bear away that came onto me and Tori's campsite.
Do you hear that?
I hear the crackling of this fire. I don't hear a bear.
No, I hear something over there.
Well, we did just see bear tracks on the beach. Buck, go scare the bear away. So, Buck heard a rustle in the bush, and he went over that way to check it out, and then a freaking bear crashed through the bush, and Buck just charged the thing, barking full speed like a bat out of hell, and I fired a bear banger over Buck's head from behind Buck, and then I heard what must have been the bear crashing back in the bush. Hopefully it's scared. I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed. I don't think that there's a problem bear here. They're not used to people at all in this country. But taking on two fully grown people and a dog that looks like a polar bear / wolf probably wouldn't be the best bet.
Terrified.
Really?
Yeah,
Are you shaking?
a little bit, yeah. I'm probably not gonna sleep tonight, so I feel like he's still there.
Good boy, Buck. And here is the bear that has been lurking around our campsite.
He got along well with other dogs. He tolerated our cats even.
Come on. Don't be scared. Good boy. You did it.
And was just the dog everyone wanted. But even the dog that people who didn't like dogs decided that they wanted a dog after hanging out with Buck for a relatively short period of time, which was one of the things that most amazed me. And he just has just touched so many people with his big calm yet almost cartoonish, adorable personality, and his beautiful wolf-like looks, and he really made the world a better place to a certain extent. And some people say, what's the point of getting a dog or treating a dog as a pet? And a lot of people think, well, it's so hard when they die and they don't live long. But both Tori and I are so thankful that we got to experience Buck. As sad as it is that we didn't have him for as long as we'd like to have, and that dogs don't live long. It's so important that we got these experiences we did with him, He was even at our wedding. He was the ring bearer at our wedding even. He was with us through some challenging times. When my son Wesley was diagnosed with about a month ago with a rare genetic syndrome that's going to give him a lot of serious challenges, a lot of serious handicaps in life, and Buck was always there to be calm and relax us while we were patting him, and it just made us feel so much love and just relieved all the stress from those experiences. And we realized it's just better to have loved and lost than not to love at all. And we want to say thank you very much to Alex Matthias for giving us Buck. He was an amazing dog. We even tried to breed him, but unfortunately by the time we tried to do that, it was too late in the game, and his wasn't in the best health, and it wasn't possible. But Buck was from a long line of dogs that were native run dog teams in the Northern Ontario Tomogamy area, and they were Husky and Malamute mix. And back in those days, trappers used 2, maybe 3 dogs. They didn't have these huge teams that the modern day racers used, and so they used heavy set dogs. That's why they bred them with the Malamute, that are very strong and very, very hardy dogs. And for whatever reason, a lot of these dogs just ended up having incredible temperaments that are almost strange for Huskies. A lot of Huskies aren't as calm as Buck is. And Malamutes oftentimes are not as laid back even and non-confrontational as Buck was, and Buck's brothers and sisters as well. So he's really just a one-of-a-kind special dog. You couldn't just go get a Husky Malamute mix and have him be like Buck because of this bloodline of legendary dogs in the that were used in the Tomogamy region of Northern Ontario. And Buck's kind of branch also had just dogs with this amazing temperament, and he's the last of that branch, and there's very few remaining, if any, in that bloodline of dogs. So Buck was kind of one of the last. So yeah, there's just so many good stories we can think of Buck. I remember seeing a documentary with an old guy on bloodhounds from the American South, and where they got really attached to their dogs, and he said sometimes in an entire lifetime you might come by one really, really good dog, and I'm worried that that dog was Buck, and that he's a once-in-a-lifetime dog. So yeah, there you go. I guess I'm sad to have to share that news with you, because things seemed like they were going well. It seemed like he was pulling through, and he's so tough, but just all of a sudden this his surgery just got complicated, and we're more or less just stuck in a position where there's just nothing we could do to save him. We thought the surgery was going to be less complicated, and that we'd have a lot of good time left with Buck still. And I wanted to say thank you to everybody here too for just coming along on trips with me and Buck, and just letting yourself enjoy Buck's personality. I hope that he enriched your life too. A lot of the things people said was how amazing it was when we'd paddle up to a rapid, and Buck would jump out of the boat and run along beside the rapid, and then wait for us at the end, and then jump back in the boat and go. And somehow he always knew how to find the trail, or always knew where to be, what was the easiest place for us to pick him up before we even did. Like, he figured out what a better spot was than us, and he'd always meet us there and jump back in the boat. And so I feel really fortunate that I got to do all these amazing things with a companion. I just think of times when I'm just like, in a blizzard in the Arctic, just in a tent with me and Buck, and I could just put my hand over and pat him, and it was just seemed like we're the only two beings in the world sometimes on trips like that. So, you know, as sad as it is to lose an amazing dog, but Buck's one of those dogs that might be that one in a lifetime where you hope they live forever. But you know, if dogs live forever, I never would have got Buck in the first place. So, you know, there's always a silver lining behind all these things. It's very emotional for both me and Tori this whole period of time, but yeah, we're just gonna keep trying to tell the silver lining and just and try to you know, just share some of the fun stories about Buck. And it's going to be really challenging for me to edit my Baffin Island series, because that was a major trip that I did with Buck in the winter. And Buck just had such an amazing time on that trip. Every day he'd just sleep outside as I was breaking camp and packing up. And then I'd pick up the leash. I'd say, "Okay, Buck, time to be a sled, Diggy." And Diggy is just my, you know, pet name for dog or whatever. And Buck would get up and he'd stretch his back legs and he'd stretch his front legs and he'd wag his tail and he'd come over to me all happy that his, you know, 8-hour-a-day walk was starting again. And he just had such an amazing time out there on that Baffin Island trip. And it was just so awesome that I got to spend the time that I did with him. So I might hold off on editing a bit, just because it's gonna tug on the heartstrings a little bit to watch all this footage of Buck, but it's gonna be also good to relive some of those times I had with Buck. And also I just want to dedicate the whole thing to Buck and to man's best friend in general, because they really are man's best friend. You know, dogs are pack animals, and we become part of their pack, and that's why they make such amazing companions. And so I'm glad that I got to be part of Buck's pack. And yeah, he really was my very best friend.